Hey, are you a business owner, entrepreneur, or professional? If so, we want you to apply to be a featured guest on our show. My name is Adam Torres, and I host the Mission Matters series of podcasts. I've recorded over 3,000 episodes, and we are just getting started. How do you know if you'd be a good guest to be on the show? Well, only one way to find out, and that's to apply, but I'm going to let you in on a little secret. We want guests that have a story to tell, guests with a brand, a product, or a service that can benefit my audience of listeners. If this sounds like you, go to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. I'd love to talk to you and get to know more about your story. Again, head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, now let's get into the show. Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of the Mission Matters Money Podcast, your source for all things money. My name is Adam Torres. You can follow me on Instagram at AskAdamTorres. Keep up with my book releases, book tour schedule, signings, all that other good stuff. Always love to connect with you there. And as always, if you'd like to apply to become a co-author of one of my upcoming books, just head on over to the website, missionmatters.com, and click on Become an Author to apply. All right, so today I have Troy Eckard on the line, and he's CEO over at Eckard Enterprises. Troy, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you, Adam. I really appreciate it.
All right, so this is always a hot topic in our money podcast. So investing in the oil and gas industry, which I understand you've been doing this since the 80s in this industry. So, I mean, you're definitely a pioneer in the field, and happy to have you on the show. Maybe just to get us kicked off, tell us a little bit more about Eckard Enterprises and your background.
Yeah, it's real simple. Since 1985, I have basically worked on direct ownership and asset retention by high net worth investors who want to be in the energy space. Predominantly, my career has been in the hydrocarbon or oil and gas sector. And what our company does, we manage investment assets on behalf of wealthy investors who would like to own those assets directly rather than through a public vehicle like a stock market type of an asset. And we've been doing that for almost 35, 36 years.
So, you know, there's varying levels of investors listening to this right now. So some may be a little bit more versed and some may be just kind of getting started in terms of, and I don't mean necessarily wealth, by the way. I just mean maybe they haven't gone into the alternative space. They may have significant portfolios that are you know, in other areas, or maybe they have accumulated real estate, things like that. Maybe just to get us kicked off on that end, where does the new investor that's thinking about oil and gas, they've heard of it, they're curious, where do they start? What would you say?
Well, the most important thing is to understand that whether it's oil and gas or real estate or any other investment, it's always about what your end objective is. And so what I say is that if somebody's looking for a easy entry and easy exit into a particular space like energy, they better be thinking about something like a public equity where they can get in and out and it's marked to market or marked to the valuation is easy to determine. If you're looking to specifically add a direct ownership with a longer-term goal, then you can look for either private equity investments, you can look for specific hedge funds that focus on the energy sector, or you can do what I do, which is look for sponsors or individual companies that have partnerships, LLCs, joint ventures that specifically invite qualified investors to participate collectively along with other high net worth investors in certain aspects such as mineral rights, exploration, seismic programs, or maybe even pipelines. So it depends on your goal, where's the best place for you to start. But at the end of the day, the majority of investors out there, Adam, just simply don't take the time to figure out that the oil and gas industry is not as difficult as they make it. It just requires a little bit of education on their part by using the internet and by looking at the sites that are available today via some Google search or some other type of search engine.
Let's go further into what you do, because I feel like a lot of the information on some of the indirect forms of getting ownership to these types of investment vehicles, I mean, it's really prevalent. But it's not every day that you get to see somebody that's been doing this as long as you have. So let's talk a little bit more about, you know, direct ownership, how it works, and maybe, you know, what types of investors maybe that it could be right for.
Yeah, I would say predominantly in my business, we only deal with accredited investors, which have $1 million or higher. But there are a lot of programs out there that will allow sophisticated or non-accredited investors. And the real aspect of what makes someone want to own oil and gas investments directly is that they really have bought into the space. In other words, if I believe that oil and gas investments, which are long-term by the nature, is going to be someplace that I can invest money and reap the benefits of 2 or 3 cycles up and down, which is kind of similar to real estate, then I'm definitely going to want to be looking at direct ownership, because in a public environment, generally the way the public vehicles are set up is the majority of the value or gain from that asset is going to be retained at the corporate level, and the individual investors just get a parceling of those particular benefits. So in my case, investors who want to be direct owners of investments are looking for a sponsor, a management team that offers the expertise both in asset management, but as well as asset identification that can guide them where those opportunities exist in what space. You know, is it minerals today? Is it pipelines tomorrow? And that's really, really important. But I think overall, regardless of your listeners' financial net worth or whether they're credited with $1 million or not, you must have energy in your portfolio because it is a direct correlation to how some of your other assets will perform in a good way or will perform in a bad way based on what the cost of energy is.
Now, I know there's differences, tax treatment, market cycles, like there's a lot of differences in this, but would it be fair to make a comparison to say that maybe some of the same group that prefer maybe direct ownership in real estate, like it's kind of, I know it's not a one-to-one, but is that for somebody that's not familiar with the concept, a good way of them to think of it, like almost like buying a REIT in real estate where they don't necessarily have all the benefits, but it's easier because they can get in and out. But if they think they're going to be, involved in that, whatever the real estate deal is or market or whatever that area is for the long haul, then there's possibly going to be some real specific benefits for them having the direct ownership. Is that a fair comparison or am I off?
No, there's some enormous comparisons that between what I would call traditional real estate and oil and gas assets. For example, the IRS allows you to use a 1031 tax exchange coming out of traditional real estate like apartment complexes or normal commercial assets into oil and gas as a direct 1031 exchange. They both qualify. So the IRS treats oil and gas investments exactly like they do traditional real estate. The same thing can be applicable when it comes to your tax benefits. For example, when you buy into a drilling venture, you're going to get 100% of those drilling dollars deducted the first year. But when it comes time for the income, you actually are giving the equivalent of depreciation like you would in a building. Your depreciation is called depletion because you're depleting a reservoir. So from a tax perspective, a lot of similarities. From a description under the IRS code, there's a lot of similarities, if not exactly the same kind of IRS treatment. The biggest issue is that there's a mental block with investors when it comes to oil and gas because they think it's kind of like playing baccarat in Vegas. The baccarat tables are always empty because only a very few people understand it. It doesn't mean it's complex. It just means they're intimidated by it. So there's a lot of value in oil and gas. It's just a matter if the investor individually takes the time to learn the sector. And once you do, you'll make it part of your cornerstone because it does belong in most wealthier or most affluent partners' portfolios to some degree.
Man, that's awesome. And that sheds a lot of light because I feel like in terms of exactly what you said, the real estate side, maybe, I don't know if it's industry-wide or what, it just had a different branding mechanism, right? Or maybe it's because people live in homes, right? So there you go. So the baccarat comparison, I love that. I've never really understood why it was, but you're right. It takes a little bit of education piece there. So if somebody's listening to this, Troy, and they want more information, whether they're investors or whether they want to learn more about the industry overall. I mean, how do they connect really with your team and just to see what's going on over at Eckard Enterprises?
Well, we obviously have our website, EckardEnterprises.com. We are focused in about 3 different sectors, so each one of our companies has its own web presence. But at the end of the day, we've had the same 800 number since the 1990s. Our address, we're extremely transparent. We're very easy to access. In our total portfolio, we're owners of the second largest natural gas pipeline in the Gulf of Mexico, but it's privately held, so nobody's ever heard of it. We own interest in hundreds of wells and thousands of acres of minerals. So what somebody would do is simply just go to our website, look up the contact for our business development department. What we would do is we talk to you about what your goals and objectives are. We find out whether or not you qualify to even think about being a partner with our firm. And even if you're not going to be a partner with our firm because you desire not to be or you don't qualify, we can help guide you in many areas of where you want to look for either bonds, public traded equities, private transactions. We can help you figure out which direction you need to go. We've been doing this for decades, and we quite frankly enjoy the relationship between private investors and the energy space because the more we educate and the more they learn, the better it supports the oil and gas industry as a whole. So it's really, really important. And, there's just a lot of opportunity, Adam, right now when you have an industry that's had such a financial setback like the oil and gas industry has since the pandemic and COVID started. It leaves many publicly traded companies at 50, 60% discount to their value back in the first quarter. It also means that many of the oil and gas direct assets are down by 40, 50, 60% in the last 180 days. So if you are an active investor who's broadly spreading your investments, the energy space is wide open for opportunity just because of what's happened over the last 6 or 8 months.
Well, hey, Troy, really appreciate that update on what's going on right now, but of course also what you're doing overall at Eckard Enterprises to educate, current investors and potentially future investors who are interested in the space. So definitely a pioneer there. And to the audience, as always, thank you for tuning in. Hope you got a lot of value out of this. I hope you learned a lot. If you're listening for the first time, don't forget, hit that subscribe button. Definitely love to have you be a return listener. And if you've been with us for a while, don't forget, leave some comments on that YouTube channel video. Love the Mission Matters Money. Love to connect with you there and keep the conversation going on and hear your opinions of what's going on in oil and gas. And Troy, thanks again for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much, Adam. You have a great week.